Ladies and gentlemen, please sit down because now we have somebody who's really dominated the cultural discourse. But before we have her, I wanted to acknowledge that the Stephen Cowley session was presented by United Phosphorus. And the film that you just saw is called The Challenge of Liberty. And 25 of India's most eminent artists have painted specially for this event under that theme to talk about all the issues that restrict creative expression, religion, sexuality, one's relationship with tradition and parents. It's out in the atrium. It's called The Challenge of Liberty. In your spare time, please do have a look at it. And many of the canvases are for sale. And now, I'm going to be talking to a person whose book exploded like a bomb in 1971. And it exploded in two ways. It upset one half of the human race, women, and it upset the other half of the human race, men. But when the smoke cleared, nobody was dead, but a completely new space had been opened up for one half of the human race to begin to express who they really are in all their multifaceted selves, not constrained either by the need to be men or the need to be idealized women, but just to be the messy individuals that we all are. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Erica Jong.
I'm wearing much higher heels than Thank you.
Is that fine? That's fine. That's fine.
Perfect.
Erica, as I said, you're not just a writer, you're a phenomenon, you know. And your books have really come like a flood over these 40 years. You know, to discuss your life's work is going to take longer than this 30 minutes. So I thought that I'd like to speak to you through the prism of two things that are very essential to your work. One is the more confessional, psychoanalytic analytic side of it, you know, and through three central relationships, your parents, more specifically your mother, your husbands, and your daughter. And the other would be through the literary aspect and how you opened up spaces, in both these ways. So let's start with your parents, Erica, your mother. You said that in many ways her frustration powered both your feminism and your writing. Can you tell us a little bit about her, you know? Why did she shape you the way you are?
My mother died 3 weeks ago at the age of 110 months, 2 months shy of her 101st birthday. She was born on the 10th of December. She was a passionate Sagittarian, fire sign. She was a woman of immense talent and intelligence. She was a Scrabble genius. She could make so many 7-letter words that I wouldn't even play with her. She had an immense vocabulary. She was born in Bristol, England, of Russian Jewish parents who were both both Ashkenazic Jews from Poland and Russia, but they met in London. My mother was born in Bristol, brought to America when she was 8 years old. She had a mid-Atlantic speech. A figure was a figure. If you got your period, you got unwell. She was English in her speech, and yet she had grown up in America. She was a marvelous painter, designer. She could cut a pattern freehand. She could draw the dress, cut the pattern freehand. She once, when I was a little girl, dressed me for Halloween as an autumn leaf. She cut out little leaves of gold and red and brown and sewed them onto my leotard, and they fluttered. And when I twirled around, I was like a leaf. She was so incredibly talented that it was overwhelming to a little girl. At the beginning of our lives, there were three of us. I am sister number 2 of 3 sisters. My older sister, Susanna, was beautiful, the first grandchild, and very, very clever, and a talented painter, and a talented actress, and so on. The first grandchild, beloved of my grandparents. We all lived together in a very European-style family. My grandfather painted upstairs. My mother went around saying, "I never have my own studio. My father has the studio." And she would set up her easel in her bedroom, in her living room, and paint. And she was furious. And she used to tell a story that when she was at the National Academy of Design, the head of the school said to her, "You're the best in the class, and we will not give you the Prix de Rome. You deserve it, you won't get it." She said, "Why?" He said, "Because you're going to have babies and you'll never use your talent." This was 1930. Women in America got the vote in 1920, as you remember. My grandmother, my mother's mother, remembered the suffragettes with pride.
Yeah. But Erica, in Fear of Flying, and in essays you've written about your mother, you said that she forbade you from being ordinary, and and you've lived up to that script. But then you didn't, so what was this ambivalence with your mother if she was this wonderful, creative person? Why was your relationship so ambivalent?
She was intimidating, enormously intimidating. I mean, I think my mother had an IQ of 200. I also think my mother had what they today call rapid cycling. They used to call bipolar. Her moods would shift. One minute you were the best child in the world, and the next minute the worst. That was her psychology. She may have had ADHD. She couldn't sit still. I have a bit of it. I get up and pace. When I come to a hotel in a foreign city, I pace the room and hang up all my clothes. My darling friend, my best friend in the world, is here in Goa with me. She gets in bed. I pace the room. She tried to go to sleep. She'd say, "What are you doing?" I'd say, "I can't sleep until I've hung up all my clothes." So maybe I have a bit of that. But my mother used to say, "If it weren't for you 3, I would have been a famous artist." And actually, my mother has 3 paintings in the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And they are portraits of Lee Krasner, the wife of Jackson Pollock. And Lee Krasner was my mother's best friend in art school. And they were rebels even then. And the guys used to call them the Russians. The Russian girls, meaning they were the Jewish girls. And Lee and my mother, girls were not allowed to go down to the basement of the National Academy of Design. It's still there on Fifth Avenue in New York. And there were dead fish in the basement for a still life. And Lee and my mother went down to the basement, painted the still life, and then ran upstairs and showed the boys that they had done so much of a better job.
So, Erica,
they nearly got expelled from school.
Erica, this frustration that your mother had after the birth of the 3 children, and she felt that it stunted her career. You have this passage in Fear of Flying, it's almost a catatonic response to being a girl, where you almost willed yourself into not having menstruation and to stop your periods.
Right.
Did you really feel that panic about being a woman? And have you really never typed in your life for fear of being a secretary?
I now can type on the computer, but I rather write longhand on a yellow legal pad. I feel freer when I do that. I have notebooks that I scroll in. My handwriting is very big, so I have zillions of notebooks. One of these days, they'll all be at Columbia in the rare book room, because Columbia has acquired all my notebooks and my archive and so on.
So did you go through this phase of extreme repudiation of being a woman?
Yes, absolutely, I did. I had, what do they call it, anorexia nervosa, long before it got famous to have.
By Lady Diana. You've been a pioneer in every way, Erica.
I starved myself. Starting at the age of 14, I began to starve myself in order to lose weight. And I starved and starved and starved, and I wouldn't even drink water because I didn't want to be bloated. And eventually my periods went away, and I developed these big pustules on my face. And I've written about this in Fear of Flying. And my parents sent me to this doctor on West End Avenue, this little German lady who had blue numbers on her arm. She was a concentration camp survivor. And I don't remember her name, but I showed her the way my face was breaking out, and I told her about my anorexia. And she said, "My dear, the skin is the mirror of the soul."
But
Which is true, of course. And
yes,
she said, "What are you afraid of? Why did you stop eating?" And I said, "I'm afraid of being a girl. I get my period, I'll have breasts, I'll have babies, and I will never be...
have an intellectual life.
I will never be Emily Dickinson. I will never be Edna St. Vincent Millay. I will never be William Shakespeare. I will never... All I wanted was to be the greatest poet in the English language. And I thought, if the breasts and the uterus defeat me, not to mention that I really liked boys.
In fact, we need to talk about
And
the
I
boys.
still like boys.
We do want to talk about the boys, Erica. You know, when we spoke briefly, I asked you the question that intrigues me the most about you. You know, 4 husbands, many lovers, and then a man that you stay married to for 23 years, you know. Did you find that ideal man? Who is this man? Why did you marry him? Why have you stayed with him, you know?
Well, I stayed with him because on our first date, I thought, this is the most clever man I've ever met. He's almost smart enough for me.
You also told me something really radical, Erica,
What?
and you have to say that for the audience.
What?
That he's the man that your parents would have picked for you. You know?
Well, what's really funny is, first I married a
I have to emphasize that, you know, the icon of feminism, you know, still valid 41 years later. When she finally finds the man she wants to live with, it's a guy her parents would have picked, you know.
No, but it's not true. It's not really true. First guy I married was my high school sweetheart, the first boy I ever had sex with. I didn't lose my virginity till I was 17, and I was already in college, and I married the guy. So, okay, I'm a little, right? I wasn't going to just have sex with anybody. Maybe that's why I had the fantasy of the zipless fuck, because I was really a good Jewish girl from Central Park West. Even though my parents didn't believe in God, they were atheists. My grandfather used to say religion is the opiate of the masses. But in a way, I was a good girl, okay? I always got A's in school, blah, blah, blah. But the nice Jewish boy I married had a schizophrenic attack and tried to fly out the window with me.
And
That
that's
was
the
pretty
phrase.
scary. So our marriage came apart.
He tried to kill you as well.
Yes. I was 22. It was really traumatic. You can imagine how traumatic. Okay, so he went into the hospital, and the doctor said he has schizophrenia with homosexual panic. When the health insurance ran out after 3 months, his parents came from California, and my father and told me their son wasn't crazy. He had just married a Jewish princess who had ruined him.
Crazy.
And they really believed that, by the way. And then we flew back to California. We put him in a hospital. And the day we put him in the hospital, Michael said to me, "You're a traitor. You're worse than Judas. You belong in the deepest circle of Dante's hell." And I left, and that was the end of the marriage. It was over. I went back to New York.
And Erica, you spoke of how your in-laws wanted you to give up working. And
they said that you should give up your graduate work and support him while he's in the hospital. And I said, no, I'm in the middle of getting my master's degree at Columbia. I have 4 scholarships, which I didn't need because my father could well afford to pay. I will not give up my PhD in 18th century literature to take care of a kid who's crazy. I will not. But I felt very guilty, okay? So then I sort of was single again, and I meet a psychiatrist at a party. He's called Alan Jong. He's very tall, very good looking. He's Chinese American, doesn't speak a word of Chinese, grew up in New York, went to school in New York, and he's very handsome and an indefatigable fuck.
Yeah. But you still left him. So fucks aren't all that it's made out to be.
He was phenomenal in bed. But he was a Freudian shrink. And whenever I said, "How are you, darling?" he would say, "How do you think?"
So.
My grandfather said of him, my darling grandfather, Papa, said, "Alan is very clever, but he speaks like a telegram, as if the words cost money." Can you imagine me with a man who doesn't talk?
I was just going to say that. I want the takeaway from meeting you to be that talking matters even more than the sex, So then what happened?
Then I'm married. Then I'm taken out to California for a movie that's going to be made of Fear of Flying. I'd been with Alan for 8 years. We'd lived in Heidelberg, Germany during the Vietnam War. He was drafted as a doctor in the Army. You know, the American Army was drafting doctors out of private practice when Vietnam came along. A lot of people don't know that. It's the first time they had drafted doctors since Korea. Okay, so I lived in Germany with an Army officer doctor, which was a fascinating experience. And then I realized, and I was psychoanalyzed by a great psychoanalyst in Heidelberg and in Frankfurt, a great English-speaking psychoanalyst. At the end of that process, I realized I could not stay with Alan. There was no way I could stay with Alan, and I couldn't have a child with Alan because he was weird. He never talked. You know, he was very clever, he was very nice. If I showed him a cartoon in the New Yorker magazine, and I said, "Isn't this funny?" he would say, "Why do you think so?" And he was great in bed, but we couldn't talk, okay? So about a year, in 1973, Fear of Flying was published. 2013 will be the 40th anniversary of Fear of Flying, and we're doing a ton of things, new hardcover editions, new editions all over the world. There's even a new movie being made. There's a new script being written. There are 5 million scripts. I wrote one, other people, okay. So it's now a new script is being written with me looking on and giving notes. God knows. Maybe the movie will never get made, but whatever. So where am I?
So why did you have a baby with your next husband? And
Oh,
actually,
Jonathan Fast. I meet Jonathan Fast. He's a red diaper baby.
I like the amnesia about your husbands.
I fall madly in love with him in Los Angeles. We don't get married because I don't believe in marriage anymore. We're never going to get married. Marriage ruins everything. I'm sort of like the Angelina Jolie of my generation. Never get married. So we go on a book tour to France, to Paris, and then Copenhagen. And I stopped using birth control. And one night on the Boulevard Saint-Germain, we have great sex. And in the morning, I say to my French publisher, Hortense, I say, Hortense, we made a baby last night. And Hortense says, how do you know? And I said, I know, we made a baby. I mean, I did know.
It was that sublime.
We got to Copenhagen. I started to have morning sickness. And it was great. I had the most wonderful pregnancy. I felt like the mother goddess the whole time I was pregnant. I was so happy. I was never depressed. My thyroid was working beautifully. I lost weight. I had the baby. I nursed the baby for 5.5 months until she was so enormous. And then by the time she weighed 20 pounds, she was born at 8 or 9 pounds. My family, they have big babies. So by the time she was 6 months old, we started giving her cereal and juice, and that was it. She weaned herself. And I cried and cried when she weaned herself. My darling friend Jerry, who's with me, said to me, have a child, you'll never regret it. My best friend in the world, who is in Goa with me. And of course, she was right, totally right. The baby inspired me. I was so happy. But
what had changed in these years, Molly? Erica, you were so petrified of having children and of all of domesticity, cutting off your creativity. What had happened in these years that you were desperate to have a baby?
I became a world-famous writer, so I felt I could now do it.
You were liberated by that.
Yeah. And then what happened was the jealousy of my then husband, whom I adored. But there came a day when he said, I'm number 3 in the house. First the baby, then your work, then me. And he started to get really awful. And one night he went out and he met somebody and fucked her. I had done that too. We were, we were hippies. And we lived in California, and we were supposed to have an open marriage. But open marriage doesn't work because people are territorial and they get jealous. Yeah. So he fucked someone and I fucked someone, and then the resentments began to come in. They do. The jealousy, the territoriality. And then one time I went to France to be with my French publisher, and I took Molly, and John went out and met somebody. I don't know who. At the time, I didn't know. And I came back from France, and he was full of tears. Oh, I love you so much. I love Molly so much. I can't leave you. I can't leave you. I can't leave you. But he got involved with this other girl. And then he wanted to come home. All my friends said, Jonathan misses you. He wants to come home. He misses you. He misses you. He misses you. He's coming home. So then the girl he got involved with got pregnant deliberately because she knew that he wanted to come home. So she got pregnant and he left for her. Now we're all friends. And when we have Thanksgiving together and I see Molly's dad and his wife, whom I adore, I think, shit, I dodged a bullet.
Why?
So then I'm single for 8.5 years, and I have a lot of guys in my life. I had one for sex, one who looked nice in a tux, one you could really talk to, one might be gay, the one you could talk to might be gay. Fine. And I think, I am never getting married again. You know, those were the days when I was getting $1 million advances. Those were the days when the publishers weren't scared to death, right, of everything. And I was supporting everybody, house in the country, house in the city, blah, blah, blah. And I was never getting married again. 8 years, 8.5 years, 9 years, never getting married again. And then one night, I go out with this guy named Ken. He's a lawyer. He's a beautiful guy, handsome face. And he's quoting Shakespeare and Marlowe by the yard. He's quoting Dr. Faustus, his favorite play by Marlowe. He's quoting Macbeth. He's in love with poetry. But he's a lawyer, you know. He reads 5 novels a week. He reads everything. He's super smart, super, super smart. And he comes from what seems to be a very wealthy family. He's Jewish. He has a mother who paints beautifully, a father who's a businessman. By then, my father had become a businessman, and for a communist, surprised himself by getting rich. And although he was just a band leader when my mother found him. And a band leader, a drummer, you know, whatever. And you can read about it in Fear of 50.
Yeah.
One of my favorite books. So I meet Ken. He's a sort of affluent Jewish boy with a sailboat.
Arranged marriage.
My parents could have arranged it, you know? He's exactly 1 year older than me. Same birthday, March 26th. We're both Aries, fire signs. He's incredibly stubborn. Handsome, clever. He was a filmmaker early in his life. He worked with Brian De Palma. He made documentaries. Then he was a journalist. Then he went to law school and became a lawyer. We have everything in common. We both lived through the 60s. We both smoked pot a lot. Then not a lot, because it makes you paranoid. You know, they've now bred it so well that you have one puff of cannabis and you think the police are coming or the CIA. Really. I mean, the American pot is Humboldt County's Sensimilia. You know, they've bred it. I mean, you take a puff and you think, the CIA is at the door, and they're going to arrest me and send me to Guantanamo. So I meet this guy, and I make up my mind, I am not sleeping with him. I am not sleeping with him for a month. And I never call him back on the phone. He's calling me. I never call him back. I tell him I'm busy, I have other boyfriends, which was true. He goes nuts, crazy. Oh, I had this very fabulous lover in Italy at the time who was phenomenal in bed. And I go to Italy to go to cooking school in Italy and learn how to make pasta. Actually, I never cook, it's a lie. I wanted to be near this boyfriend who would come down and fuck me. He lived in Venice, the cooking school was in Todi. He would drive down and fuck me, and Ken would be on the phone. I'm on my way to Paris, meet me in Paris, I'm sending you a ticket. I think, sending me a ticket? There's never been a time in my life when a man sent me a ticket. I sent tickets to men.
Yeah. But you like that, Erica. I mean, ultimately, power women like the brute men or the men who do it for you, you know. That's something that we have to come back to.
So we meet in Paris and we stay in this weird place.
If it's okay with you, I'll just extend it another 10, 15 minutes. You know?
We stay in something called a maison de passe. You know what is a maison de passe? A maison de passe is a little hotel in a garden where people had their 5 à 7. You know what is a 5 à 7? When you met your mistress at 5 o'clock, and you could stay with her till 7, you went to a little hotel where you had your 5 to 7 5 à 7. And then you went home to your wife for dinner, and your kids, and you had dinner at 8. And, you know, women did this and men did this, and it was that kind of hotel. And we spent a weekend in that hotel, and it was a disaster. Really a disaster. He went and ran bath water for me with Vita bath in a pine bath. And I said, Jesus, you don't have to run a bath for me, for God's sake, but I want to run a bath for you. I want to take care of you. You're so sweet. I want to take care of you. And I said, yeah, they always say they want to
All the feminists are turning in their graves, Erica.
No, they always say they want to take care of you, and then you take care of them.
But, Erica, because we're running out of time, I just wanted to shift gear a little bit.
So 3 months later, reader, I married him.
And you've stayed married.
And this summer, August 5th, we will celebrate 23 years together. And he's become the most wonderful father to Molly. And we have all holidays with the bio dad and père de step, and stepmother and half-brothers and everyone. And it's nice.
But Erica, I wanted to ask you that, a big strand in your life, clearly, and in your writing is psychoanalysis, and you said, apart from the fact that he was Adonai, you also said that you'd both been psychoanalyzed.
Yes.
And because you knew yourselves at that age, that perhaps the marriage stuck. So, can you tell us what really crystallized through all the psychoanalysis that you've had? What is the understanding of yourself that you came to that's made you so comfortable in your skin now?
I was scared to death to write. Not to write, but to show my work. And it was Dr. Michalik who helped me with that. I would write, but I couldn't show anything. And part of it, and I would sit in my chair trying to write, and I would imagine someone behind me about to shoot me. And I couldn't send my work to a publisher. I was too frightened. And my psychoanalysis helped me with that a lot. Later, I came to see that my mother was very competitive with me. My two sisters were very competitive with me. Look, a couple of years ago at Columbia, there was a big conference of scholars from all over the world, and they said Fear of Flying is a classic. And there were all these scholars from Harvard, from Columbia, from the UK, from France, England, Poland, whatever, who said, now we know Fear of Flying is a classic all over the world. At the tea break, my older sister got up, uninvited, and said, I love Erica very much, but she's ruined my life. She's ruined my life by writing this novel in which she revealed that I was Jewish. And she endangered my life and that of my children. And people just went, they gasped. They couldn't believe, that this would happen. And all the press about the conference was not that I was now a real writer and not just a sex fiend. It was all about Erica Jong's sister, Susanna, got up at the conference and said, Erica has ruined her life. And there was a reporter from the New Yorker magazine there. And she was going to write about Now I Was a Classic, right? Instead, she wrote about my sister. And she interviewed me afterwards, and she said, why did your sister do this? This is so odd. And I said, well, every family has crazy people in it, and my family is no exception.
But was it about her being Jewish? I was reading about that, and I think it was also about the fact that you had had a sexual skirmish with her husband, which she denied.
I did not have a sexual skirmish with her husband.
Or did you claim that?
I did not. Her husband laughingly said, her husband was a Lebanese Christian, okay? They're killing all the Christians, the Copts, and the Jews now. The Shiites don't like the Alawites don't like the Shiites, the Sunnis hate the Shia. That's what's happening now in the Mideast, and they don't like the Jews and they don't like the Christians either, and they would like everybody to be a Muslim, but of their particular sect.
So what did he say to you?
Who? No,
Your sister's husband.
my brother-in-law went to Columbia University. He was not a primitive man. He said jokingly to my younger sister on another visit, he said, in the Bible, if you married the eldest sister, you got the other two. He said it as a joke. But Claudia, my younger sister, took it literally, and she came to me and said, Arthur tried to seduce me. I think it was completely a misunderstanding. So my novelist's mind said, what a great story. And I put it in the book. It never happened. If my husband says, I'm married to a novelist and a poet, I know that she puts things in her books that never happened. And I know that my daughter, Molly, also puts things in her book that never happened. Molly tells a story at dinner. It sounds like, she took off to Mars and met God and came home. Yeah. She exaggerates. I exaggerate. That's part of being a writer. Ken knows that. But the average person doesn't get it.
Yeah.
Those things never happen.
Yeah. Erica, I mean, we're really running out of time. So, and as I said, this is too riveting and we can go on and on. But a couple of very quick questions
Right.
before we wrap up. One, in these 23 years, have you lived up to the ideal of the zipless fuck? Have you had other lovers?
I would not talk about that to anybody. I mean, you know, I don't talk about that. I know that human beings are jealous and territorial, and open marriage is impossible. I tried to do it with Jonathan, didn't work. So if, by chance, something happened in Paris, forget it, okay? Or Venice or Rome. I will never,
Yeah.
or Goa. I will never tell,
Yes.
okay? Doesn't mean I won't write about it.
Yeah. Erica, two strands that we can't absolutely leave
Right.
undone is that you turned feminism on its head. You know, you wrote at a time when they would have butchered you in the marketplace.
They did.
They did. Because
The second wave feminists said I was a bad sister because I wore lipstick and I liked high heels and I liked lace underwear. And they said that I was a bad sister. In those days, you were supposed to look like Andrea Dworkin. You were supposed to be enormously fat and wear overalls. And I refused.
And be a man.
I refused because I like femininity. I enjoy that. You know, I had anorexia. I got through it. And I like being a woman.
Yeah. You know, Erica, you know, so we come to your daughter, who it's fascinating now, in many ways has recast herself or has constructed herself differently from you, you know. I mean, she's more conservative, or she is where it took you 40, 50 years to get to, you know. She likes parenting in a very intense way. She loves being a mother, you know.
I love being a mother.
You did.
And I love being a grandmother. And my friend Ken Follett calls me the zipless gran.
So, Erica, you know, if you were to look back on your own legacy, what is the space that you opened up for all of us? For your daughter?
Molly knows she can do anything. Molly published her first novel at 19. Molly actually wrote a novel at 19. It was published when she was 21. Normal Girl. It's a very good novel. It's about a girl who's destroying herself with drugs. And then her friends begin to die, and she comes to understand that drugs are a death wish. It's a very good book. Then Molly wrote The Sex Doctors in the Basement, a bunch of satirical essays about growing up famous. Then Molly wrote a book which I have copies of, I'm going to give out later at my signing, which is called The Social Climber's Guide. It's hilarious. It's about Upper East Side mommies and how competitive they are and how they want their husbands to get ahead and they want drivers and cars and designer clothes. It's hilarious. Molly she's a chip off the old block. She has 3 kids.
You didn't overwhelm her the way your mother overwhelmed you.
She has 3 kids. She had her first child, her first son, when she was 25. She married a very nice man, a professor of literature, who went later, he said, I can't be a professor of literature. He's a Yale PhD, okay? He said, I can't support 3 children in New York. as a professor of literature, I got to go into my dad's investment business. And he started an education fund, which is actually doing well. So it's fine. She married a really smart man who's smart enough for her, nice enough for her. She had better judgment than I did. She's raising her kids. Pretty soon, they're all in school all day, and she's going to go back and write another book.
Erica, we're going to have to leave it at that.
Right.
I wanted to say a couple of things about your literary contribution, which we haven't been able to, but just to say that you also took over the male picaresque, Tom Jones, Henry Fielding, Philip Roth, but you turned all that sexual male picaresque tradition and you injected heavy doses of intellectual awareness into it, and so you bent the form. You've written the sexual intellectual novel.
Well,
and
I always wanted to write the books that didn't yet exist. The books about the female hero. I mean, the Odyssey is not about a female hero. Penelope stays home and holds the suitors at bay. Ulysses has all the fun. And I wanted the woman to be Odysseus. I wanted the woman now to explore the world. I've written another novel called Sappho's Leap, about the great Greek poet Sappho. Some people think it's my best book. Publishers are so stupid.
that, Erica, is for another day. And so we have it. Feminist, world-famous writer, well-married, a grandmother, and still perhaps the woman chasing the zipless fuck. Erica Jong, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Thanks. Lovely.
Thank you.
Thank you for talking.
I want to say that if you want to ask me questions, come to the book signing. I am not selling books. I'm giving them to my Indian readers. And I am not a merchant. I am an artist. And whatever books I have, I will give to you because I love India. I love your literature. And I love the beauty of your country. And Goa is phenomenal.
Thank you. Let me take you back.